For as long as the Galactic Materials Registry existed, its word had been treated with the same reverence ancient civilizations once reserved for divine commandments. Its vaults, both digital and physical, contained knowledge older than most starfaring species. It cataloged not just elements and compounds, but the stories behind them: planets destroyed by instability, research stations vaporized by accidental contact, entire species pushed to the brink of extinction because they mishandled what they did not fully understand. At the heart of this vast archive lay a classification that united the galaxy in universal fear: V-class volatile. No other label carried the same weight. No species debated its meaning, for it needed none. V-class volatile was the absolute edge of scientific caution, the farthest boundary of material safety. Anything given this designation was not merely dangerous, it was catastrophically, cosmically, unreasonably lethal. A material could be radioactive and still be manageable. It could be corrosive, acidic, explosive, or structurally unstable, and the galaxy would simply apply containment protocols. But V-class meant something else entirely. It meant unpredictable. V-class substances were the nightmares of physicists and the bane of engineers. They reacted to kinetic force, pressure changes, vibrations, electromagnetic fields, and in some cases, even fluctuations in thought linked neural waves. They fractured reality's cohesion in tiny, violent ways. They hummed with instability, as if the universe itself had regretted creating them. There were exactly 512 such materials documented. That number had remained unchanged for millennia, a dark and constant reminder that the cosmos held corners even the bravest explorers refused to approach. Each material had its own entry in the registry, accompanied by stern warnings, casualty numbers, case studies, and in some extreme instances, memorial pages. The galaxy carried scars from these substances. One material, Axiom Shard 44b, could detonate with the force of a continent's destruction when exposed to a mild gust of wind. Another, Hypercrystal Turn 6, destabilized quantum bindings when struck, vaporizing anything within 100 kilometers. Entire mining operations had vanished in blinding flashes of impossible colors after striking the wrong pocket of volatile crystal. More than one species had declared star systems permanently quarantined solely because traces of a V-class substance were found drifting through the vacuum. Civilizations learned from the mistakes of their ancestors and built their traditions around avoidance. The Ceridani performed ritual cleansings when transporting even microscopic samples. The Korth sealed V-class materials behind triple-layered psychic dampening fields, guarded by monks who had spent decades training their minds to feel nothing. The Varnesi didn't even speak the names of the materials aloud. They believed the vibrations of the spoken word might trigger an energetic flare. To them, these substances were curses of creation. To the galaxy, they were untouchable. Thus, the registry's decrees became law. Every academy taught the same rule: V-class materials must never be touched, exposed, or subjected to kinetic stress. This was not considered caution. This was considered survival. Entire planets adopted the symbol of the V-class designation: spiral fractures enclosed in a red hexagon to mark forbidden zones. Children knew the sign before they learned to read. Explorers would approach a newly discovered planet with scanners at maximum sensitivity because finding volatile deposits meant immediate retreat. Scientists joked darkly that the universe had a sense of humor. They could travel faster than light, manipulate gravity, bend space, and harness antimatter, yet still trembled before the silent shimmer of materials that refused to obey the laws of stability. And then humanity arrived. In the grand timeline of the galaxy, humans were infants. Their technology was barely a few centuries old compared to species whose histories stretched across epochs. The older races expected them to enter the galactic stage with humility, caution, and respect for ancient knowledge. But humanity had always been peculiar. They questioned rules the galaxy considered immutable. They treated threats as puzzles. They experimented with the reckless curiosity of a species that had tamed fire, split atoms, and launched themselves into the void long before they were physically or psychologically ready. Humans approached danger not with fear, but fascination. Their arrival brought enthusiasm, optimism, and a kind of stubborn bravery that other species weren't sure was commendable or suicidal. It was only a matter of time before their paths would cross with the V-class materials. No one expected the incident that followed. No one believed any species, especially one as young as humanity, would dare defy laws established over thousands of years. The galaxy assumed humans would quickly learn the meaning of the forbidden list and avoid it, as all civilized worlds did. Instead, humanity reacted with a simplicity that shocked the cosmos. They picked up a V-class material. They touched it. They inspected it. They worked with it. The galaxy's greatest fears had rested untouched for millennia. And yet, when humans encountered the unstable substances that entire civilizations quarantined planets to avoid, they did something no one expected. They began making things out of it. That moment, small, casual, almost accidental, became the spark that ignited one of the greatest cultural and scientific clashes the galaxy had ever witnessed. It was the moment the universe realized that humans were not merely another addition to the interstellar community. They were an anomaly, a variable, a species whose relationship with danger bordered on artistry. And for the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy began to question whether the forbidden list was truly absolute or whether humanity was about to change the meaning of impossible forever. The scandal that would shake the entire galactic coalition began with something so absurdly mundane that it took weeks before the galaxy realized it was not a joke, not a mistranslation, not a satirical human broadcast. It began with a bag, not a containment pod, not a shielded quantum vault, not a sterile hover case encased in kinetic dampening foam. No, an ordinary, slightly worn, soft-sided human duffel bag. Station Asterion 4 was one of the most secure research facilities in the Orion Spur. It was the place where the galaxy's most delicate, most dangerous substances were studied behind armored blast partitions, energy dispersion nets, and psychic null fields designed to prevent even subconscious interference. Every visitor underwent multi-layered scans, disintegration of contaminants, and personal clearance checks that took hours. Humans, of course, arrived late. They came rushing through the docking corridor with apologies, half-jokes, and that peculiar human trait of smiling during situations where no other species would show their teeth. 4 humans and 1 bag, slung casually over the shoulder of the ambassador, as if it contained nothing more serious than a change of clothes. Dral Vec, the chief materials scientist of Asterion 4, greeted them with wary politeness. The station had only hosted humans a few times. and each visit had resulted in raised anxiety levels among the staff. Humans carried a reputation for unpredictability, curious, impulsive, and somehow capable of turning even routine procedures into high-risk adventures. Still, even Drolvek was not prepared for what the humans had brought. Conversation was light at first. The humans made jokes about allergens in the station atmosphere, asked about the cafeteria's beverage options, and seemed genuinely fascinated by the station's cleaning drones. Drolvek attempted to keep them focused as he guided the delegation toward the research wing. His frills twitched in quiet agitation each time they wandered off topic. Then the ambassador hoisted the bag onto a table. "Before we begin, we brought samples to show you," he said cheerfully. "Thought your team might be interested." Samples. The word in a research facility was sacred. Samples were always cataloged, scanned, and introduced cautiously, especially before entering a secure wing. Drolvek expected inert metals or stable polymers, perhaps a Terran energy crystal or a carbon composite the humans were known for. He did not expect to hear the ominous, unmistakable resonance of a V-class material rattling around inside a soft, unshielded bag. Every sensor in the room activated at once. Alarms flashed crimson along every wall. Emergency protocols kicked in, automatically sealing the doors and flooding the room with kinetic suppression fields. Several researchers shouted warnings in their respective languages. One fainted outright. Drolvek froze, skin paling to a sickly shade. "Human," he whispered, unblinking. "What is in that bag?" The human ambassador blinked innocently, completely unaware of the panic erupting around him. "These? Oh, just some bats." "Bats?" Drolvek echoed in horror. "Practice bats," the ambassador clarified as he unzipped the bag. The room collectively screamed. Inside lay a neatly arranged set of gleaming rods, polished, curved, and shaped with unmistakable purpose. They pulsed with a faint, sickly iridescent glow that every scientist recognized instantly. Their surfaces glittered with microfractures that shifted in impossible patterns. The air around them hummed with unstable vibrational frequencies. Drolvek staggered backward. Those are hyper-resonant crystalline composites," he gasped. "V-class. Unsafe. Uncontained. You carried them through the station, through the docking bay, through the corridors." "Yeah," the ambassador said, nodding sympathetically. "They're a little heavy, but the grip's good." "The GRIP?" The ambassador lifted one casually, as if it were nothing more dangerous than a wooden stick. The unstable crystal shimmered dangerously with movement, sending every monitoring device on the station into a panic. "Put a DOW in." Half the room shouted. "Oh, right, sorry." The ambassador set it gently on the table. The bat emitted a soft, melodic hum. One of the alien scientists checked their monitor, then stared at the humans in pure disbelief. These materials detonate under vibration, under force, under sonic resonance, under emotional telepathic leakage, under random cosmic background radiation fluctuations. They choked. "You hit things with them?" "Yeah," the ambassador said, unfazed. "Balls, usually." Another fainting sound echoed across the lab. It took 10 minutes to calm the alarms. It took another 20 to bring the emergency fields offline. Drolvek needed 5 minutes just to find his voice again, though it came out strained and trembling. "Why?" he finally asked. "Why would you make sporting equipment out of V-class materials? How is that even possible?" The humans exchanged confused looks as if the answer were obvious. One of them shrugged. "Because they hit really cleanly. Perfect balance. Great for power hitting drills." "But they're volatile," Drolvek insisted. "Only the early prototypes," the ambassador said. "The League banned those. Too unstable." The ambassador paused, then added thoughtfully, "Or was it because of the melting?" "Hard to remember." Drolvek nearly collapsed. Within 40 minutes, the incident spread through the station. Within 2 hours, it was on every research channel. Within a day, it reached the Galactic Council. Teachers whispered about it. Journalists exploded with coverage. Species across the galaxy panicked, theorized, debated, and cursed the recklessness of the young, bold, impossible humans. They had taken hypervolatile materials that older civilizations dared not even touch and turned them into sporting gear. It was the first crack in the galaxy's understanding of humans. The first time species realized the Terrans did not perceive danger the way others did. The first proof that humanity's relationship with risk bordered on madness and mastery. The scandal of the bag, as it came to be known, would forever mark the moment the galaxy understood one truth. Humans didn't just survive danger. They repurposed it. Humans treated the galaxy's forbidden materials the way a blacksmith from ancient Terra might have viewed a newly discovered metal, something to test, bend, shape, and eventually master. The rest of the galaxy watched with escalating disbelief as humanity did not retreat from V-class substances, but instead pushed directly toward them. The first major discovery happened on Arconis B, a volcanic world with a crust that heaved like a living beast. The planet was famous for being unminnable. Every expedition that attempted extraction suffered from ground quakes, atmospheric detonations, and unpredictable bursts of plasma from deep fissures. But humans were drawn to challenges the way fire was drawn to oxygen. They landed with reinforced suits, stubborn optimism, and what alien observers described as unhinged confidence. Within weeks, Terran engineers founded a molten mineral that radiated raw kinetic potential. It thrummed with barely contained force, vibrating at frequencies that destabilized the very ground around it. The Galactic Registry identified it immediately as V-class kinetic ignition compound, a material so unstable that even observing it from orbit was considered risky. Other species advised the humans to seal the planet and depart. Humans did not. They studied it, mapped its resonances, and built precise containment shells. They learned the mineral's rhythms like musicians learning a new instrument. And once they understood it, once they could manipulate its harmonics, they forged it into something entirely unexpected. A ball. A glowing, pulsing, dangerously beautiful sphere designed for a new Terran sport called Hyperstrike, a game created specifically to test the limits of both athletes and the volatile material itself. The humans launched the ball in controlled arenas against shockplate walls. Instead of detonating, it rebounded with blistering speed, leaving streaks of shimmering energy through the air. They ran drills where players sprinted after the ball's unpredictable ricochets, leaping with grace that seemed impossible for a species evolved on a single low-gravity world. Every scientist who watched the footage felt their hearts stop. The entire galaxy had abandoned the mineral as untouchable, and humans had made it recreational. Word spread faster than official channels could contain it. But Arconis B was only the beginning. On the storm-racked moon of Vassal Prime, Terran researchers discovered gas plumes that crackled with electromagnetic amplification. The Vassalians considered the gas cursed harmless when dormant, catastrophic when energized. It had turned their early settlements into fields of fused metallic glass. The gas easily earned its V-class designation. No species had attempted to collect it in centuries. Humans arrived with collectors, pressure stabilizers, and an eagerness that bordered on lunacy. They approached the swirling vapor with confidence, adjusted their containment protocols on the fly, and captured samples that flickered with visible arcs of electrical discharge. Every alien expected humanity to weaponize it. But the Terrans looked at the roaring storms, at the lightning that danced like living creatures within the clouds, and decided something else entirely. This would make incredible lighting for a sports stadium. And so they built one. Using stabilized Vassal plasma, humans constructed a dome of pure electrified brilliance, lighting the arena in shifting hues of blue and violet, creating a spectacle that drew crowds from across nearby sectors. Spectators watched hyperstrike games beneath a sky of living lightning, entirely unaware that the glow above them was made from a material once responsible for leveling entire colonies. Humans didn't just tame the gas, they turned it into ambience. Alien societies began to panic. Emergency scientific councils convened across dozens of systems, each meeting filled with frantic messages and urgent declarations. The humans are using V-class materials as toys. They are integrating hypervolatile substances into athletics. Have they no survival instinct? How are they still alive as a species? Networks broadcast endless debates. Some accused humans of ignoring millennia of galactic safety knowledge. Others argued humans had found stabilization techniques the galaxy had never discovered. But no matter the argument, the conclusion was the same. Humanity was rewriting the rules of what could be done with danger. More footage leaked clips showing human athletes wielding bats crafted from hyper-resonant crystals, sprinting across fields enhanced by gravitational ripple paths, performing maneuvers that blended raw physical prowess with technologies older species had sworn to avoid forever. The galaxy watched a match where a player dove into a shockwave produced by a volatile rebound ball, emerging unscathed and triumphant as the crowd erupted into cheers. These weren't acts of recklessness, they were feats of mastery. Every species that observed the phenomenon felt a mixture of awe and terror. To them, humans had always been unusual, bold, emotional, quick to adapt, but this was something more profound. This was humanity treating the universe's most dangerous materials as a challenge to be overcome, not a threat to be avoided. The galaxy's greatest terrors had become human tools, human experiments, human pastimes. To civilizations who had spent thousands of years fearing V-class substances, it felt like watching a species willingly dance on the edge of a supernova. But the humans weren't dancing. They were playing. And every alien who witnessed it began to realize the same truth. Humans didn't see volatile materials as death sentences. They saw them as opportunities, resources, raw potential waiting to be tamed. This transformation of danger into sport, of instability into craft, was not a fluke. It was a declaration. Humanity had arrived in the galactic stage, not as timid newcomers, but as fearless innovators who could look at the universe's forbidden substances and ask, "What else can we do with this?" The rest of the galaxy could only watch, breathless, as humanity continued reshaping the impossible. Panic had never united the galaxy so effectively. The moment the footage from Arconis B and Vassal Prime reached the broader coalition, emergency channels lit up like solar flares. Entire committees were formed overnight. Councils that hadn't convened in centuries suddenly declared full session. Even the reclusive Vairathi, whose species usually ignored galactic politics entirely, sent envoys wrapped in shimmering cloaks of astonishment and concern. It wasn't just that humans were using V-class volatile materials. It was that they were good at it. Flawlessly good. That terrified everyone. Within days, a gathering was called an event so unprecedented that even the founding species of the galaxy struggled to remember a time anything similar had happened. It was officially named the Interstellar Emergency on Human Material Misapplication, but history would remember it as something far simpler: the Human Volatility Summit. The summit took place in the Grand Orcs Chamber, a colossal arena built inside a hollowed asteroid drifting between three suns. It could seat 10,000 delegates and project millions more as holographic observers. Its ceiling shimmered with cosmic murals depicting the stories of species that had survived eons. This was the place where wars were prevented, where alliances were forged, where the galaxy decided its destiny. And today it had gathered to understand humanity. Delegates from across the spiral arms filled the chamber, towering crystalline beings from the Varn Dominion, floating gas sacks from the Ventari Choir, clawed and armored Korath protectors, elegant Seredani scholars, and hundreds more, all vibrating with anxiety. The ambient telepathic air was thick with disbelief. In the center of the chamber stood a massive projection of the number 512, the V-class designations rotating slowly, ominously. When the human delegation entered, the noise died instantly. They walked with relaxed confidence, hands in pockets, whispering to each other about the architecture. None of them seemed the least bit alarmed that they were moments away from being lectured by the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. But it was Ambassador Juno Reyes who drew all focus. She strode to the central podium, a small crystal drive in her hand, and looked out at the sea of alien faces, some terrified, some furious, some simply exhausted. When she smiled, a ripple of unease passed through thousands. Humans, the galaxy had learned, liked to smile before doing something unpredictable. Ambassador Reyes boomed the Orcs Council Chair, a being made entirely of shifting fractal glass. We gather today in deep concern regarding humanity's misuse of highly dangerous. She held up the crystal drive. "If I may," she said calmly, "I think it's better if you see this." Without waiting for permission, she inserted it into the projection console. The chamber lights dimmed, the screen ignited, and the galaxy watched. Footage filled the air, slow-motion visuals of Terran athletes striking hyper-resonant bats against volatile energy balls, shockwaves firing across arenas without detonations, close-ups of players sprinting across walls enhanced with inertia bending tiles, sweeping shots of roaring crowds beneath a vassal plasma dome, flickering like dancing auroras. Aliens gasped. Some screamed. A few fainted into their translator harnesses. To them, The video looked like a training montage for disaster. But the humans didn't look afraid. They looked alive, thrilled, unified. The next clips showed Arconis B engineers in hazard suits, tapping volatile ore samples with experimental tools, adjusting frequency tuners in precise micro-gestures. Then came the labs, humans building containment shells, calibrating harmonic stabilizers, mapping out every dangerous resonance with a meticulousness the galaxy hadn't credited them with. Then came the words on the screen, narrated by the human ambassador herself. Humans didn't build these technologies to defy the galaxy. We built them to surpass ourselves. The footage expanded to show humanity's past mountain climbers clinging to sheer cliffs, deep sea divers swimming among volcanic fissures, astronauts training under crushing G-forces, emergency workers running into burning buildings, children skateboarding down impossible ramps with wild grins. The video made its point without a single spoken explanation. Danger did not repel humanity. It shaped them. Call it recklessness. Call it courage. Call it insanity. But humanity had evolved by confronting threats head-on, not by hiding from them. When the lights returned, no one spoke for a long time. The silence was thick and electric. Finally, Ambassador Reyes stepped forward. "I know you're afraid," she said. "You've lived through ages defined by loss. These 512 materials scarred your history. But humanity didn't grow up with these fears. We saw danger as a challenge, as a teacher, as a reason to innovate." Her voice echoed across the chamber. "We don't worship safety. We build mastery." She lifted one of the crystal bats carefully, respectfully, but without fear. The entire chamber trembled as warning sensors blared to life. "This," she said, "is not a weapon. It's a promise that humanity will never be defined by what terrifies us, only by what we can transform." Then slowly, deliberately, she demonstrated a swing. Not a powerful arc, not a reckless motion, but a precise, elegant, vibro-dampened curve that caused the bat to emit a soft, harmonic chime instead of an explosive scream. The alarms died instantly. Every scientist in the chamber leaned forward. Every warrior narrowed their eyes. Every scholar took frantic notes. In that moment, the galaxy realized it wasn't watching a foolhardy primitive brandishing volatile materials. It was watching a master craftsman demonstrating control. The summit didn't end in condemnation. It ended in something far more surprising: curiosity. The galaxy had gathered expecting to scold humanity. Instead, they left wondering, how much more could humans do? Ambassador Reyes knew it too. When she left the podium, she whispered to her aide with a grin only humans could understand. "Give it 6 months. They'll be asking for tickets." And she was right. The galaxy had come seeking an explanation for why humans danced with danger. What they found was an invitation, a doorway, a new era. The aftermath of the Human Volatility Summit was unlike anything the galaxy had ever experienced. Delegates returned to their home systems, not with resolutions or condemnations, but with questions that refused answers. How had humans tamed materials the galaxy had long feared? How could they harness substances that shattered physics and sanity alike? And most unnervingly, why did they smile while doing it? Within months, the phenomenon that had begun as an anomaly transformed into a movement. Species once horrified by the Terran approach now sought to witness it firsthand. The first interstellar tickets to human sporting arenas sold faster than diplomatic access to any council chamber in history. Entire planets tuned their communications networks to receive live feeds of hyperstrike matches. Sensors on distant moons were calibrated to capture the light trails of hyper-resonant balls streaking across arenas in impossible arcs. The humans had not just survived the galaxy's most dangerous materials, they had elevated them. The 512 volatile substances, long considered untouchable, had found purpose. Each crystal, plasma, and kinetic compound was repurposed, refined, and integrated into equipment, arenas, and ceremonial gear. Helmets that once threatened spontaneous meltdown now cushioned athletes with energy-absorbing lattices. Bats that could previously obliterate a laboratory now sang with harmonic resonance in the hands of skilled players. Balls that might have vaporized a moon became conduits of spectacle, leaving ephemeral trails of radiant energy as they arced across stadiums. Observers from every species flocked to study the humans' methods. Scientists wanted to understand the stabilization techniques. Engineers wanted to replicate them. Artists, surprisingly, wanted to adapt the patterns of energy trails into visual expressions. For the first time, the galaxy watched danger and creativity merge seamlessly, and every species was forced to admit a truth they had long resisted. Humans had a fundamentally different relationship with risk. Humans didn't merely manage danger, they celebrated it. Every match, every arena, every leap and strike was a declaration of mastery over what the galaxy had deemed uncontrollable. The hyperstrike arenas became laboratories in motion, classrooms without walls, and stages for spectacle all at once. Children of every species watched footage and learned that instability was not necessarily a death sentence. It could be a challenge, a puzzle, a source of exhilaration. Entire educational curricula were rewritten to include the study of Terran techniques for working with V-class materials safely, combining physics, biomechanics, and what one ancient alien poet would later call the human art of courage. The Terrans also reshaped societal norms. Stadiums became cultural hubs where species from rival worlds interacted peacefully, cheering together for victories achieved with materials that had once threatened annihilation. Diplomats were forced to negotiate around the schedules of hyperstrike seasons. Entire sectors began marking human arenas as neutral zones, not for treaties or trade, but simply because the energy signatures alone could halt wars if spectators were present. In short, the humans had turned the galaxy's deadliest substances into instruments of unity. Centuries of caution and fear melted before human ingenuity. The 512 volatile substances, once silent symbols of terror, were now celebrated in annual exhibitions. Each year, new equipment and arenas were unveiled, incorporating previously untouchable materials into ever more spectacular displays of athleticism and artistry. Alien athletes trained under human guidance, and even species with physiologies too fragile to touch V-class materials directly learned to participate through adapted technologies, immersive simulations, and synchronized energy fields. By the end of the first century, since humanity's debut in the V-class arenas, the galaxy had transformed. Interstellar sporting leagues outshone the political councils that once dominated the collective consciousness. Scientists, scholars, engineers, and diplomats recognized that the greatest lessons of the human approach were not merely technical, they were philosophical. Humans had proven that fear need not dictate behavior. They had shown that boundaries, even absolute ones, could be challenged safely, creatively, and collaboratively. And yet, even as humans expanded the limits of possibility, they maintained their characteristic humility. They did not claim dominion over V-class materials. They did not declare themselves gods or masters. Instead, they simply played, trained, and competed. They turned danger into culture, instability into celebration, and lethal substances into the threads of connection between worlds. When new species encountered a human arena for the first time, the reaction was always the same. Sensors screamed warnings as volatile energy pulsed in the air. Historical warnings flashed across displays. Yet every observer, once they saw the humans leap, strike, and manipulate the unstable substances with grace and control, whispered a single stunned phrase. Humans made this. Of course they did. It became the mantra of interstellar society, a recognition that humanity had transformed the impossible into the achievable, the deadly into the communal, and the forbidden into a bridge. In time, historians would look back and mark the first century of human involvement with V-class materials as a turning point in galactic history. Species who had once recoiled in fear now collaborated, learned, and thrived around the arenas humans had created. Dangerous worlds became sites of exploration and education rather than quarantine. Terran principles of daring, innovation, and courage spread across sectors, inspiring generations to approach risk not as a barrier but as a challenge. And everywhere, in every system where the lights of hyperstrike arenas glimmered across the void, the galaxy understood a truth it had never fully accepted before. Humans did not merely adapt to the universe. They reshaped it, and in doing so, they redefined what it meant to survive, to master, and to thrive. The 512 volatile materials remained dangerous, yes. They could still kill, still destabilize, still defy physics. But under human hands, they became instruments of wonder. The galaxy had once feared them. Now, it celebrated them. And humanity, smiling and proud, continued to play.